Hi, everybody. It's Father Michael Nasser coming to you from St. Nicholas Orthodox Church in Grand Rapids for this week's midweek reflection, which I began last week in talking about race. But actually, the more I think about it, I'm not really talking about race. I'm talking about how we talk about race, because I think there's a huge problem in how we in this country are talking about race. And so I want to look at how we're gonna talk about it. One of the things I want to say first off is that I think there's a ton of confusion. When people talk about what's going on, they'll say things like what's going on in the country or the current situation or the time that we're in. They can't even define it. We know that there's a racial component to it, but what is the situation? What is the issue? And because there's confusion, I think different ones of us are thinking different things, and yet we're talking to each other, supposedly. I think actually we're talking past each other in a lot of situations where we think we're talking about the same thing because we talk about the situation, whatever that happens to be, um, but it's not clarified. And that's one of the problems I see happening. Even Christians talking about this, they tend to talk about it without even defining what the problem is. The second thing is, not only do they not define what it is, um, I think we talk through so many things these days through the lens of politics, that there are Christians talking about race in what they call a Christian way, but through the filter of politics, either from the left or from the right, or sometimes from the center, but typically from the left and the right. That's the lens. We Christians don't talk about Christian faith or even Christian perspective from a political point of view. We can have a Christian view on politics, but what seems to happen is that we have a political lens that we look at our faith. And so you have Christians on both sides of these issues, whatever the issues happen to be, thinking they're coming at it from a Christian perspective when it's a political perspective that they have brought on to their Christian faith, not the other way around. So what do we have to do? We have to understand what's politics, and what's faith is faith. And those are two different things. So I think understanding what perspective is an important thing we can do. The second thing is, I think, to define the issues. What are we talking about? When we're talking about race, what are we talking about? I'll give you one example. When Colin Kaepernick started his protests of racism in America, in some cases it was defined, some cases it was defined as police brutality, in some wasn't as defined. But when he started doing that and did it during the national anthem, singing the national anthem at the NFL games, one thing I said at the time was people that are upset with him aren't talking about racism, they're talking about the flag. He said it's not about the flag, it's about racism. So we could see how in that instance people were talking two different issues, thinking that they had to hold the ground on their issue, when really they were talking past one other group talking about a different issue. So if we're going to find a way forward to be able to talk about race in an effective way, one of the things we have to do is understand the person we're talking with. What issue are they talking about? Forget their perspective for a minute. What's the topic? What's the issue? That's one thing I think we need to do. Once we do that, then again, we have this difficulty because people say, well, this is the truth. Well, what's the truth? It's the truth as they understand it. And especially in the modern world, we can have competing truths. It's like, well, that's how you see it, but I see it differently. If we're going to talk effectively about any difficult topic, and race is one of them, we have to talk about what the truth is, what the facts are. And so often there's a reluctance to do that. And I think until we say, all right, let's look at the issue, let's define it, and then define what the truth is about it. Again, we're going to talk, even if we're talking to the same topic, we talk past each other because we're looking at often two different sets of truths. So what's the solution? I think the Christian faith and Christian life is a solution to every problem in the world, including this one. I mentioned last week we have to listen. So not just be clear on what we think and why we think it, but what is the person we're talking to? What perspective do they have? What topic are they talking about? And why are we concerned? Because Christians are always concerned with love. Not just in some flowery sense, but the sense of I'm going to sacrifice and I'm going to listen more than I'm going to talk. I'm going to try to understand more than I'm working at being understood. It's one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Seek to understand and then be understood. Um, just today, actually today's epistle reading began with bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. If Christians are going to be a positive part of this discussion, I think that's the reason that we seek to do this by bearing another's burdens. I may have my own views and maybe they're really helpful even. But if I'm just talking to somebody else and not listening, then where's the conversation going to go? So the Christian perspective is one of sacrifice. I'm going to listen first. I'm going to understand first. Hopefully, I'm going to earn the right to be heard. And having defined what we're talking about, having understood the lens we come at it, I think that maybe we can actually have good, positive conversations. Somebody's got to give. Somebody's got to say, okay, you first. But what we're doing as a country and all throughout the country is everyone's talking at the same time. Like I said last week, no one's listening, and we're not getting to where we want to go. So I think having some Christian love and sacrifice as we go through these conversations, being willing to hear things that we may not agree with, developing some trust so we can actually talk to each other and say, well, here's what I found out. Let me share with you my information. Let me hear what you think about it. And actually have a positive conversation. It is Christian loving sacrifice that can be a really positive part of that positive conversation. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep talking about this topic or not. We'll see what I think about for next week. But I want to encourage everyone, look inside, find the love of Christ, who always thought about the other. Everything he did was about the other. It was about for us. And from that same place of loving sacrifice, engage in conversations where we love someone else, to listen to what their topic is, to understand their perspective, understand that we even have our own perspectives, and try to work those back to being a Christian perspective first and foremost. Politics can come later. First of all, as Christians, and then to bear each other's burdens, to hear the hurts of people, understand them. I say this knowing that in I think a few minutes we're going to get some indictments or not in the Breonna Taylor case, and the world's going to blow up again a little bit over this. We've got to stop if we're going to be part of the solution. Listen, understand, build trust, love, and then engender that in the people we're talking with. Hope this is helpful for you. If you think it's helpful to someone else, please share the video with them, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless.